I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now.
Welcome, ladies and gents, to round 3 of PSGL F5. We are heading to Belgium, which so happens to be my co-commentator's favourite track. That will be Daniel right next to me. That's that side. How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm very, very good, thank you there, Reese. Yes, absolutely. Headed to Spa-Francorchamps in the Ardennes, in the Belgian forest. And it's a circuit which is always great fun to commentate on, always great fun to watch, and especially good fun to drive as well. Though, of course, that particular pleasure not being reserved for us today.
Absolutely. And last week, I want to quickly talk about last week briefly. That race definitely posed a lot of challenges, some drama, being a full wet qualifying, well, no, an intermediate qualifying, and then a full wet race, which was quite surprising on the track of Miami, which caused quite a lot of drama. Dan, I know you, I don't know how much you've recapped yourself, but that definitely was a dramatic race.
It was. I think what was especially interesting was those who decided late on in the race to try the intermediate tyre, and it didn't really pay off for anybody. I think if the race had maybe been a lap or two longer, then we may well have gotten ourselves into a position where then we could have had some tasty fights between people on old wet tyres who had track position versus then drivers on brand new intermediates who are then at that point at the very end of the race on the right tyre. But unfortunately, it was not the few laps before when they put the tyre on. So it was an interesting mix of strategies going on, and a different mix of setups too. Some drivers opting clearly for more downforce in the corners and just more downforce generally, I suppose, given it was wet conditions. Then others able to then keep themselves ahead with a great deal of straight line speed.
Yeah, and that definitely posed a lot of difficulty, because in the wet you don't have the DRS, so the people with the straight line speed were able to hold out a lot easier, and it caused a load of problems and definitely upsets and surprise. Dimitri did go and win the race. Started a bit further back than he wanted to. Brilliant run by him. Salah also getting in fourth, so almost. Salah's close, and I've got to give Salah some credit here in the Mercedes. He's been up there. I think he was 5th in the first race and then 4th in the second race. I will need to double check that, but he's been up there, top 6 at least. Is it going to be his race this week to maybe push himself to the podium?
Well, it all depends, of course, because, you know, with this track being such a favourite amongst people, amongst the community, I think it's fair to say, as well as amongst F1 fans generally, I think that this one will be one of those ones where drivers will be very keen to do well. Probably will have practiced a bit more than the likes of, say, Miami that we were at last week, where of course we had that great race there, and you know, those other sort of early season tracks, the ones that everybody gets a lot of practice in because it's the start of career modes and things like that. So Spa, I think, will be an interesting one. I think we're either going to see a very, very separated field, because of course there are big opportunities to gain and lose massive amounts of time around the longest circuit on the F1 calendar, and then of course on the other side of things, we've then got me forgetting where I was going with that point. So back to you.
Oh, lovely. Let's talk about overtaking opportunities about this track. Now, you've mentioned how iconic this track is, the way that it is the most commonly practiced track. Overtaking opportunities, you know, you look at the track map itself. I really should put a track map on the stream. Note to self, ask the guys to put a track map scene. Beside the point, so turn 1, if you get a good exit out of the bus stop chicane, that's turn 18 and 19, you can get a good run down into turn 1. Alternatively, you know, late braking into turn 5 through Eau Rouge and through Radion, which is turn 3 and 4. Late braking into turn 5 and 6, you know, you could get some overtaking moves there. Other hidden opportunities, hidden gems, turn 8. The hairpin that is turn 8 is very smooth. You can get something in there, and other surprise ones being turn 12 and 13. You know, a good run through from turn 9, 10, 11. Heavy braking into turn 12, following it close. You could possibly do something there. And again, of course, bus stop chicane is a massive rundown. A good exit through turn 15, through 16, 17, which are near to flat. And then turn 18, just heavy braking into the bus stop chicane, and those are your potential overtaking zones.
They certainly are, yes. Now, we were expecting to be underway by this point. A few minutes ago, we thought everything would be off to the races, as it were. Very literally, I suppose, in this case. But we are still waiting, I think, on just the one driver. Now, I'm just trying to figure out which one that is. I believe it's a Mercedes driver that we're missing at the moment. So Sally is in. So at least your idea that maybe they might be able to crack their podium duck today is definitely still on the cards by fact that they are actually here. But then in terms of any other Mercedes driver, I think we had Yare Santiago, who was taking part last week and the week before. They are a Mercedes driver in this division, but they are conspicuously absent. But it looks as though we are going in regardless now. So just a few seconds time, we should then be into the lobby.
Absolutely. And do you want to run through the track for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's have a look then. So we go through a number of different turns around this circuit then. We have, of course, this clockwise formation of the circuits, and then with some of the greatest elevation changes in the calendar. From La Source down the hill, then to Eau Rouge, and then from Eau Rouge all the way up through Radion, the Kemmel Straight, and then up towards Les Combes. It is an uphill climb all the way. Doesn't look uphill when you're on the Kemmel Straight, but Believe me, it certainly is. Then from Les Combes, up at the top of the hill through Malmedy, it's then downhill all the way back to the start-finish line. And you see then the likes of those famous corners, the likes of Bruxelles, very understeery if you don't get the braking right there. You've then got No Name Corner, which can gain you massive amounts of time on the run down to Pouon. Then, of course, through the Fagnes chicanes down towards Stavelot, then Curve Pool Frere, all the way up through then Blanchimont, and then through the bus stop chicane and across the line. So that's a quick run through the circuit there. Now, it is, as I say, the longest circuit on the F1 calendar. And we are now in qualifying, as you can see. So we are getting ready to go. Drivers probably just loading their setups, getting ready and getting themselves in the zone headed into this one. But in terms of any potential standouts in qualifying, have you got any thoughts on that? Bearing in mind, of course, that we've had Dimitri Minic and Vincent Nyquist as our two pole sitters so far this season. Do we reckon it's going to be something similar again, or is there going to be another name in here?
There's potentially Fionn. I think he's got potential. He's constantly he's got race pace for sure. Now, I would like to see him a bit higher up, maybe somewhere in the top 4. Will I think he's going to go pole? Maybe not. Rookie also been another strong name that's definitely put his mark somewhere. I would like to see him somewhere in the top bunch. Elliott, which is on our screen, unfortunately not. No, I don't think he's anywhere near. But I think it'll be the usual names, possibly with contenders like Salah, Salah, Roman, Rookie, and Fionn maybe up there.
Absolutely. Well, it will all shape out and we will get to see what happens. Now, of course, provided that nobody makes an enormous mistake, then we should be hoping to see some very quick and competitive times. Of course, around this circuit, because it is so long, we might see bigger gaps than what we were used to, say, at the first 2 rounds of the season, the likes of Austria and then, of course, Miami last week. So don't be too surprised if you see drivers separated by a tenth or two rather than the hundredths or even thousandths that we've seen this far, because of that long old distance in terms of the lap around here. Now, as far as all the drivers on circuit at the moment are concerned, we've got Elliott. Yeah, Elliott's the one that we're looking at the moment. Currently the furthest around the lap, so will be the first one to do a full proper timed lap. Hopefully they don't invalidate it, because I would quite like to talk us through the lap on the onboards with them. But we will have to wait for them to actually get across the start-finish line first.
Yep, coming up to the bus stop chicane. He's getting ready. Elliott, show us what you can do, and don't disappoint.
There we go then. So taking the late apex through the final turn, of course not what you'd want to do on the lap itself, but to start the lap, gives you a nice big straight run down to turn 1 into La Source. Here we go then. So a bit of a lock-up on the front right tyre there, but the car's recovered reasonably well, and then getting the power down, maybe not used quite as much of the exit as we would expect, but now as we head down into Eau Rouge, we go through Eau Rouge, now over the top of the hill and over Radion, and then through onto the Kemmel Straight we go then. DRS opens up on the back of the AlphaTauri, and then it's this big long uphill climb here, which means they're headed into Les Combes in just a moment's time. Onto the brakes they go then, using the curb as much as possible to open up the radius of the corner there. It then means they go, ooh, big slide there for Elliott, and they've gotten going again, but I suspect this is not going to be the world's quickest lap ever. But then here we go through Bruxelles, and as you can see there, big understeer moment if you go through there at just a bit too much speed carried through. But then headed through No Name Corner. They've used that particular part of the circuit nice and well there, and then into Pouon we go. Again, opening up the corner as much as possible using that curb on the outside to begin with, and then through the double apex left-hander. Now into the Fagnes chicane, and then this is a part of the circuit where you can, and we're seeing Elliott do here, really make use of the curbs on the inside, on the apex there. Then into Stavelot. Got to chuck the car in, hope that it sticks, and then not run too wide on the exit to then end up touching the gravel. And then we now have the flat-out run all the way to the bus stop chicane. Couple of kinks along the way, of course, but then through the left-hander in just a few moments' time. Not this one, but the next one. That is Blanchimont, of course, the corner which Max Verstappen famously went around the outside of Felipe Nasser all the way back in 2015 at the start of his F1 career. Big lock-ups then, and an invalidation right at the death for Elliott. But they'll come across the line and get nothing at all for all their trouble. Certainly looks like it. Yep, so they head back into the pits then, and not much more to be said then for that attempt at a lap from them there, which is a bit of a shame. But Fionn, as we've been seeing, perhaps not the greatest driver over one lap in this particular division, but certainly in the races, seems a very well-optimized setup in their car, seem very comfortable in the races, particularly on the high fuel at the start of the race as well. So it'd be interesting to see how exactly they managed to crack on through. But we now have a look instead at P13, currently Dazed Rhombus, and that is then headed through Stavalo into Sector 3 we go then, across that sector split, and it's a purple second sector, so this is a good lap so far from the Alfa Romeo driver. And now it's going to be that big long power all the way down the back straight here, up towards Blanchimont in just a few moments' time. They've not really opened up the corner as much as you possibly can headed into there, or used too much of the exit curbs, but if this is a quick lap, then it won't really have mattered all too much, and means they then will know they've got more time left on the table. So up towards the line they go then. And whereabouts do they go? It's actually quite a slow one there. So it's P11 for Dazed Rhombus, a 144.1. So just about, what's that, 7/10 shy of Mace just in front of them. So maybe a mistake has happened somewhere around the lap there for them. We wouldn't expect them to be that slow versus the rest of the field. So they'll go again, I'm sure, and have another attempt. So now we're on board with Fionn. Certainly does. And Fionn then nearly towards the end of their outlap now. And one of the things which I think is going to be very interesting, particularly in the race, it's not something we necessarily will be able to see too much here in quali, but that is all going to be down to setups. And that is, of course, because around Spa-Francorchamps, it is really a circuit where you can go one way or the other. Setup-wise, so you can either set up for straight line speeds, in which case this last sector we're in with Fionn at the minute, and the first sector we're about to go into, you'll be very strong. But then, it's that second sector is where you then need a lot of downforce. So do you prioritize downforce instead? Be slow in the straights, but gain huge amounts of time in the corners. Now, through quali, you would imagine that going high downforce would gain you more time and therefore get you a better grid position. But, as we watch Fionn take La Source there, and down towards Eau Rouge and Radion we go. In the race, of course, if you have a straight line speed setup, then you're going to be that much easier to get the moves done on others and also defend your position. So, might be if drivers know they're perhaps not as quick over one lap, they might be going for that straight line speed setup. Certainly, there's a great deal of speed in this car then, so headed into Les Combes they go then, over 210 miles an hour before they slammed on the brakes there. And then as they head round the right-hander of Malmedy, they've got a car just in front of them, pulls over to one side, and then into Bruxelles we go. Chucking the car in a bit tight to the inside. So on, go on, you go. Oh dear. So, I don't think you will have seen it on broadcast. I've just looked it up in the race director. What they've done is they've actually driven the wrong way somewhere around the circuit. So that is why they've been disqualified. So presumably they've had a spin, tried to get back onto the track, but done against the direction of travel. And as a result, ended up losing out because of that. So the game, of course, doesn't have quite the same circumspect as a human official who might forgive you for such a thing, but there we are then. So through the final bus stop chicane we go then with Fionn up towards the line, And it's P2. That's not a bad effort at all from Fionn there. I mean, as we've been saying, they've not typically been the quickest over one lap in the last couple of rounds. But that's not a bad effort at all. I think there were a couple of instances over the lap there where, just watching from their onboard camera rather than the offboard, there were a few instances where I think it's fair to say they maybe didn't maximize their positioning in terms of where they were placing the car, how much speed they were carrying through the corners and so on. So I think more time to come for Fionn, and they've got plenty of time in which to do it. We've still got over 7 minutes in this session to go. Not where they would like to be at all. No, it's always much easier to go about a championship battle with pole positions to then follow up with race wins. But there we are then. If they do start a bit further down the field and they've got some pace on board like we've seen the last couple of rounds, then it'll at least be entertaining, if nothing else. Right now, then we ride with P4, that being Mattia De Campo, who set the timing screens alight earlier on. Now, as they come round through Curve Pool Frere and into the third sector now, when I first switched them, it didn't say they had a purple second sector. So it might be that they're not too far up on their previous time. In fact, yeah, just switching back to them, the last update that the game is willing to give me is they are only about 800ths up on their previous best. So unless they're able to gain massive amounts of time here in the final couple of corners, up towards the line we go then with Matteo De Campo. Is it an improvement? It is. And it's an improvement just by 1 1/4 tenths. So they jump up to P2, but it's still quite some way away from Vincent Nyquist and that time of a 1:42.3, 3 tenths ahead of the rest of the field.
Yeah, and Vincent did actually improve on his lap, so he's set the benchmark and gone faster again. So he's definitely out for blood and needs to make up because he wasn't racing last week, so he's missed out on an opportunity. Won the first race. He didn't do the second race. So yeah, he's definitely out for blood because he's down. He will be slightly down on the championship.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's, of course, that win last time, first time out rather, not last time out, with the fastest lap. No, not the fastest lap. Sorry, I'm getting my coding mixed up here. So they, yes, they got pole position and the race win in the first round of the season, but then, of course, did not start last weekend, which means they have sunk down to 4th in the standings. Now, a win here today will net them 16 points. And of course then that would get them much more on an even keel because despite being down in 4th place at the moment, they are still only 2 points off of this championship lead so far. So it's not hurt them as much as it may have done if, say, Fionn had taken the win rather than a position off of the podium last time around. But it's something which they will definitely be having in the back of their mind, I think it's fair to say. So then we've got some cars in the pits. We've got cars out on circuit. In particular, we are looking at Mace at the moment, rushing round the track, headed through Pouon at the moment. And the AlphaTauri driver then. Let's see what the sector split is at the end of this second sector, see whether or not they're going to be challenging further up the field. The first attempt here, not as quick as I think they will have wanted. So now as we head through Stavolo and towards that sector split time, how much quicker are they? They're quicker by 0.04 of a second. So as is, if that's the gap that they are able to bring down by the end of the lap, and of course there is still possibility for them to improve in the final sector, but if they don't, then they will stay in 15th. So we'll wait and see. Maybe it'll be a bit like Mattia De Campo, where the first couple of sectors of the lap there wasn't much change, but then that final sector, all the time was gained. They've hit that first apex nicely in the bus stop chicane, and the second. Don't run all the way out onto the... Oh, no! Commentator's curse right at the end there. And, oh dear. Well, that's not going to be setting any timing screens alight. It's only going to be setting the rear tyres alight, I think. So, across the line they come then, 8 seconds down on their previous best at this point. believe Sally's actually just posted that lap, so I think that they have just essentially made what will probably be their last attempt to the lap this session, has Sally. So I could be wrong, of course. They could get back to the pits and then back out in the time that is remaining, but it will be very tight in order to do so. For the Ferrari driver, though, of Norby, we're just watching them coming around in towards No Name Corner then. Just chucking the car in, making good use of both entry and exit curbs there. This is looking like a decent lap so far, making all the use of the entry curb and poo on as well to open up the radius of that corner. And then through the double left-hander, down towards the Fania chicane we go. And they turn in into the right-hander, making good use of that curb once again through the left. Maybe could have used a bit more there, but I don't think it's hurt them too much there. Then we head round and through Stavolo across the line, and it's a purple second sector. They are up, not by very much. It's up by 7/100ths of a second. Not hundredths, sorry, thousandths, according to my timing screens here, which wouldn't get them very far. But if they are able to get a big improvement in the final sector here, then we may end up seeing them jump up the order, especially if they had a particularly poor final sector on their previous run that's currently on the standings. Now, a bit of oversteer there. Oh, oversteer again coming out of the bus stop chicane. So in the middle parts it was, and there we go, slower than in the end. So those couple of oversteer moments, I think, cost them maybe a couple of tenths or so. And they ended up finishing 6/100ths off of their previous best at the end of that one. Dear, oh dear. I mean, there is a bit of time remaining in this session, isn't there? I can't see how much at the moment because of the sector graphic, the yellow flag graphic, I should say. There we go. So just under a minute to go now. So yeah, Vincent not going to get another time in today. They've just sliced their way through those two cars that were dawdling there, but despite that, I don't think there's any possibility of them getting back and across the line before this lap is, before the time is out, rather. So it's now just the responsibility, I suppose, or the opportunity for the chasing pack, because it may well be that our provisional pole man is not going to get themselves pole by the end of this, because they're not going to have that opportunity to improve. We'll wait and see, though. I'll stick with them on the one screen, whereas we then have Fion on the other. Talk us through Fion's lap here. That was a brilliant lap, especially from the driver who I was saying earlier on, like the fool that I am, is not good over one lap based on the previous races that we've seen so far. But there we go, our championship leader has proven me wrong and then some today, beating their teammate by about 6/100ths of a second there. Across the line comes the Aston Martin now of Rookie, and Rookie, despite having the podium last time out, second place, they've only managed 9th this time around. In qualifying, so hopefully for them they'll be making their way up the order. And now, as the Alfa Romeo comes across the line, that is it. So I believe that is a McLaren front row lockout. And as two McLaren fans in the virtual commentary box, I think that we are being treated in this division. There we are then. So it's well, you heard it here first, folks. From Reese himself, he thinks if they went at each other, it would be very entertaining. And let's not take that out of context, shall we? Jonathan Garcia in the chat saying no audio from commentator. I don't know whether that's you or me. So I hope it's neither of us, and I hope that maybe Jonathan has their settings turned down or something like that. But there we go. Hopefully those problems, if they do in fact exist, if Jonathan is even your real name, then hopefully that will all be resolved in just a moment's time. So we are getting ready then for the players to join the session. They are all on the grid and waiting. And we've now got a 20-second countdown until the race gets underway. And then, of course, we'll have the formation lap. We'll see then what the drivers will have chosen in terms of their tyre strategies, because, of course, in this game, as in the real-life season, you are allowed to choose your tyre strategies with regards to that. You don't have to now, sit on the grid and use the tyres you use for your quickest lap in Q2 if you did a full qualifying session, or the quickest the quickest lap you did if you're in the top 10. We've got 3, 4, 5 red lights coming on. No formation lap, I think, and it's lights out, and away we go. So Fion gets off the line well, and that's then straight up into the lead. Franek is then challenging Vincent into turn number 1 here. Vincent goes just 2 positions, loses 1 to Kinty, 1 to Franek, and now might even lose 1 to Roman as well. No, Roman is right there with them, and in fact, it's Vincent Nyquist that gets back past Kinty there at the front. Meanwhile, in the back, he's off that Sally into the wall. Will that be a big old retirement for them, or just damage? I think it's just damage for that Mercedes car, but now as they head down towards Lake Com, Franek is trying to get a moves done on the race leader, Fion, but no. Vincent Nyquist ended up being along there outside there and just being able to prevent them from moving out, trying to go for the moves. They're boxed in behind the leading McLaren, and now that means then Vincent Nyquist, the main loser in that start there, and the rest of the field starting to now even out after we had the big incident there for Sally. Not sure how exactly that happened, but all we know is that going into Eau Rouge, they were just spinning around and off into the wall. Must have gone in backwards in order to not lose any tyres or front wing. And then, all the way down the back of the order, we've then got, now it's Jeremy Glimmer. They have been a big recipient of some bad luck here, it must be said. Their car looks okay. But now then, Dmitry Minic, another big winner, really, from that start there. Starting down in P12, and now up to P9. Reese, what have you noticed over the course of this first lap so far?
I honestly think Vincent was not expecting this race to go instantly into no formation lap, just straight in. I think he was prepared for a formation lap, and his launch, from what I saw, was definitely not up to pace. And you can see now Vincent's still having to work back what he lost. A bit further back, that is going to be Jerry going down the inside through the bus stop chicane, and that's an easy, cheeky move on those medium tyres. We haven't actually really looked at tyres at all. So we're going to quickly look at that now, where the front 3 are running on hard, so they're thinking long, which is why critically Vincent needed to regain the position, and hence why Jerry's working through the field quite quickly. Talking of drivers, King T needs to keep an eye of their teammate Norbid, and there is one driver, Attila, on softs.
Then. So a mix of strategies going on throughout the field. The majority of cars on the hard tyre. We do have some medium runners as well, as we can see on our screens currently. That is Jerry Van Bussel in the Red Bull, then Norby in the Ferrari, and then Mace and Jeremy as well down the other end of the field. So there is a mix of strategies going on. Whether that's now going to be re-evaluated for the likes of Sally and Mace and Jeremy, don't know, but as it is then, Dmitry Minic back up the order then into P8 so far. We're now looking at this battle here between Jerry Van Bussel and Vincent Nyquist round the outside in Pouhon. Is he going to be coming off here? I don't know. Not in Pouhon, certainly, but now headed into the Fagny chicane. Jerry Van Bussel has got it. What a brilliant bit of moves going on from them there. That's a fantastic bit of racing, obviously using that medium tyre to good effect here in the earlier parts of this race, and getting themselves up now onto the podium, and will chase on after Franek, and then of course Fion up at the front of the order. Fion, of course, who's also managed to gap Franek now by over a second, which is going to help them massively on this next lap when of course DRS is enabled.
You only have to give a round of applause for Jerry's move. That is top quality and top tier racing. You know, we're in tier 5. This isn't even tier 1 level. We're in tier 5. This is F5. And they're pulling off moves like that. I love to see it. Creative, bold, and I told you early on, that's where moves will happen. Dimitri, he's been getting edgy. He's definitely more of a race pace type man. He's not one to stick behind many people because he's already up the rear end of Mattia, and he is looking to take the position very early on. Through a Rouge we go, up through Radion. Keep the grip well, stay close. These cars can stay closer, and there's the speed that comes through as Dimitri gets it done very early on the straight, which means now he can just pull away.
Absolutely, yes, they can. Now, interestingly, amongst the top flight drivers at the moment, Fion has a massive reserve of ERS available to them. Over 3/4 of their battery is full currently. We're then looking around about 50% for Franek, and then for the likes of Vincent Nyquist and Norby as well. Same for Kinty and Dimitri. But then Jerry Van Bussel, one of the reasons I think they've been so pacey and so racy in the early part of this race, they're only down now to about 30% ERS. So they have been making good use of that battery, but perhaps a bit too much use of that battery. We'll have to wait and see later on in this stint when, of course, they will then have potentially less than 10% and therefore be much more vulnerable to the drivers behind. Of course, ERS in this game seems to be a bit more useful, and then we've now yellow flags all around the circuit. Sally is out of this race. I'm going to go on board with Jeremy here to see what's happened. Yep, they've gone off at no-name corner and just smacked the wall on the outside. That's a big old shame for Sally there, and well, there'll be no podium for them, as was predicted before the race by yourself there, Reese. So unfortunately for you, the commentator's curse has struck for your driver. Now I have to make sure I don't misbehave in terms of cursing any drivers that I might want to see do well. But there we go. So it's now then virtual safety car. No safety car out on circuit at the moment. And to give you then that full rundown of the order and the big winners and losers so far in this race, well, let's have a look. So in terms of that, Jerry Van Bussel, major winner so far. Up into P3, of course, with 7 positions gained so far in this race. Then further down the order, Dimitri, another big standout with 5 positions gained. And now, as I'm talking about positions gained, it's starting to rain, everybody, at Spa-Francorchamps. Oh no, Attila! This is, well, I think it might be possibly something to do with graphics settings, maybe something like that. I'm seeing it running along the surface of the cars that have got a more reflective finish on them, shall we say. So, and it is now starting to come down. I'm starting to see drops on the camera as well, going on board with certain drivers. So it is coming, is the rain, and if you get your pit stop wrong at Spa-Francorchamps when you know it's such a long lap, it can punish you immensely so. And this is going to be then of great benefit to the likes of Jerry Van Bussel and of Dimitri, who've made up those positions early on. Of course, for Jerry and for the other medium tyre runners, that gamble has paid off. And Jerry then up the inside in bus stop chicane as well, and has gotten the position on Franek. So they've been able to get themselves now up into P2. They've got 2.3 seconds to catch up to the back of Fion, and they might do so, and then be able to go straight onto intermediate tyres, and then end up being back on parity with the race leader. Oh, a big incident! Big incident further down. Sorry, on you go. You spotted it. Certainly does, certainly does. One mistake has just happened, in fact, for Vincent Nyquist. They have gone through the Fania chicane, had a bit of an oversteering moment there, we could see, from the off-board shot, but they've been able to keep it going in the right direction at least. But they are under enormous pressure from Norby behind, because of course, in these conditions, and with how important tyre temperature is in this game, as the rain starts to come down, the track starts to get cooler, then the hard tyres are going to be even more difficult to keep in the temperature window. And now, in Blanchimont, the move is done! Round the outside in Blanchimont, Norby has been able to get themselves up into P3. That means now then that Vincent Nyquist is down in 4th position and losing time hand over fist to their teammate and what could be their main championship rival. So now headed down the start-finish straight then. Norby is ahead. They've not got DRS to Jerry Van Bussel in front. But with the tyre advantage they have, it might be that they're able to just survive this one. We'll wait and see. They come down now towards Eau Rouge and Radion. Behind them, Vincent has more ERS available, a good 30% or so more. So things are very close between them. So now, already deploying over the top of the hill is Norby. They are trying to now drain all of the battery in order to keep ahead of the McLaren. The McLaren is not using any of theirs. So it looks like then, on this occasion, Norby survives. Yes, they do. Now further back down the order, look at this then. Dimitri fighting against Kinty, and the move is done. And Dimitri gets by then. That's a brilliant bit of driving from Dimitri. They are making good progress throughout this field and through this race. And they're watching the cars ahead now, squabbling with one another, both getting understeer in some form or another. But Dimitri able to just keep it pinned to the inside there, all the way to the apex. And their Alfa Romeo looking much better in race trim than it did in qualifying. Absolutely. Or if potentially you're able to anticipate that it's going to happen on the next lap, and then you dive into the pits early, get those tyres on, and then away you go. As it is, nobody has currently made that gamble, and then flicking through the field doesn't look like anybody is. In fact, we now see on board with the Aston Martin of Roman, and they head down towards the turn 1, La Source, and heavy braking then before they then try and follow Elliott through to then try and get a move on to get further up the field here. But we then see further down the order, Joris has now got themselves up the inside of Rookie, and they get the position then on the Aston Martin further back down the order. And then meanwhile for Roman up ahead, they are within DRS but also vulnerable to DRS behind. But in this state then, with conditions worsening, it is a DRS train. Up in P4 then, we've got Vincent Nyquist still right on the back of Dimitri Minic is behind them. They're on the back of Norby there, and Norby now has a mistake somewhere. They're suddenly slowed down and pulled to the inside going into Bruxelles. That's then given everybody a bit of pause for thought, really, as to why on earth they did that. But now headed through No Name Corner, you can see the drivers driving much more conservatively now. Now with the rain coming down, and Norby then, in terms of this strategic battle that's going on here between the pair of these drivers, much less ERS in their battery at the moment. Just under 20% in fact for Norby, whereas for Vincent, over 60%. So really there is an opportunity coming for Vincent Nyquist here to make good use of that battery, power on past, and then get on after the likes of Jerry Van Bussel ahead. Now at this point, we've had the tyres on for a few laps. Big oversteer moment there for Norby as well. This could maybe be then where the move happens. And we're seeing then no ERS being used on this big, long, full throttle section here for Vincent Nyquist, but they are being able to drag themselves up closer and closer now. Just 2/10 or so the gap as they head into the bus stop chicane. And then it's wide then of the apex and deep into the corner for Norby. Now the Ferrari driver has to plant the power properly without wheel spinning, and now as they head down towards La Source, is there going to be a move into La Source here for the McLaren driver? No, there is not. They're going to stick in behind for now, bit deep into the corner on the brakes there, and then they manage to get the car straightened up nicely as they run now down towards La Source, to Eau Rouge, and then it'll be over the top of Radion as well. They have massive reserves of ERS available. They take Radion much faster as well. Now they're using the ERS, and there's not going to be very much for the Ferrari driver to defend with. You can see there the red light flashing on the back of the Ferrari, and now the McLaren moves up into P3 in this race once again then. So Vincent Nyquist on the hard tyres is able to stick it up the inside ahead by the braking zone and reclaims that position from the Ferrari of Norby.
I'm surprised the medium tyres isn't working out for Norby, because the medium tyres, especially once it gets wetter, is the more easier tyre to heat up, keep its temperature. It's mind-boggling how he's not pulling away from this group. Is that tyre actually wearing out this early in the race? We also have to remember, yes, it's lap 8, but there's only 22 laps here because of how long this track is. So, there's a lot of questions that are being unanswered, and it's going to be a lot of work for Vincent to close a 3-second gap. But I would like to remind everybody, once again, it is raining, and we're still on slicks. So, from the way it looks, I think we're staying on slicks for a lot longer, because it's not picking up.
It certainly is. Now, in terms of the battle at the front of the field, I think I should just point out we've got a gap now of 3.5 tenths between the race leader and Jerry Van Bussel behind. But the main difference is, of course, that tyre difference. So mediums on Jerry's car rather than the hards on Fion's. And both of them dive into the pits at the same time.
Ooh, okay, this is spicy.
So, this will be the battle. And there's a tap there. There was a tap there at the back of Fion there by Jerry. Jerry just not expecting Fion to slow down quite so much, I think. We didn't see any penalties flashing up on the screen for Fion, so presumably they were still under the speed limit in the pit lane. And, well, there are some drivers who decided to carry on, try and go for the overcut here.
He's jumped him.
Going to be,
he's jumped him in the pits.
There we go. Jumped them in the pits. What a brilliant stop then for Jerry Van Bussel, who takes the effective race lead of this Belgian Grand Prix. And now all eyes on the likes of Vincent Nyquist, Alex Berry and, Dazed Rhombus, who are now going to be in a position of trying to just catapult themselves as far down the road as they possibly can. But look at the amount of standing water that's now appeared on the circuit. There is no way I can see that Vincent Nyquist is able to then retain the race lead after the end of this lap, after their pit stop. I just don't think it's going to be possible at all. The other thing that you've got to consider as well, of course, is that in these conditions, and with the changes to the tyre model and to tyre pressures especially, is that by running lower pressures, of course, you are then protecting your tyres from overheating and losing grip. But in these colder conditions, it might then be more difficult to keep your tyres in the optimum temperature window and therefore have the optimum grip. But it also means that by having lower pressures, they are going to wear out quicker. So, lap 9 of 22, are these drivers who go onto the inters now going to be able to get those inters to the end of the race? That's something that we will have to wait and see. But as far as what we're seeing out at the front at the moment, the gap is staying relatively consistent between Vincent Nyquist and Alex Berry. But it's then coming down. It's coming down between Alex Berry and Dazed Rhombus, and it's then coming down from Jerry Van Bussel to Dazed Rhombus. So, therefore, I think that's a fairly surefire sign that Vincent Nyquist is going to lose massively in the pit stops that are to come here. Fionn McKee has also lost out in terms of this lap here. They've not been able to get their tyres into the temperature window as quickly, I suspect, or maybe they've made a mistake, because they have gone from leading this race by about 0.3 of a second before the pit stops to now being a second behind the driver who was previously pursuing them. So we now have a look down to P9 currently with the Haas of Mattia De Campo, and they come up into the bus stop chicane now then, and they thread their way through here, and we've crucially got Vincent Nyquist in the pits at the moment then. So whereabouts is Vincent going to come out? They are coming round the corner now to then exit out of La Source, and I think that they may be able to just protect their position on track at the moment. Yeah, they come out in third place, but given that Dimitri Minic has now got their tyres up to temperature and Vincent Nyquist does not, I imagine that, oh, yep, there you go, wide going through Eau Rouge and then over the top of Radion. They just managed to be within track limits, but Dimitri here smells blood. They are closing in faster and faster on the McLaren. They move to the outside. Will there be a move on here into Les Combes? No, instead, the McLaren is just able to defend their position, and now Dimitri Minic here is just trying to just find another way through. Big slide for the McLaren as well. Will there be a move on into Bruxelles? No, there will not. So it might be that Dimitri Minic has just been able to keep themselves safe in this storm here.
Yeah, I was going to mention a bit earlier, Elliot, Matty and Roman Elliot and Roman and Frankie all getting penalties under the same area while trying to fight each other for P5. That battle's definitely brewing up quite a bit as Dimitri's not finding the grip he wants to. So I'm just going to drop the camera back to into this battle. They're fighting a lot, but the problem is they came out on these tyres, no grip, and just gave themselves easy penalties, when if they'd taken it a bit easier, they would have not got the penalty. Maybe they would have lost the position, but what would you rather? A 3-second time penalty at the end, or you preserve your tyre
and then retake the position back just because you're close enough. And talking of being close enough, Roman edging himself closer, coming up to the bus stop chicane. Move is looking to be a little bit more imminent. He's closing, but he's a little too far back on this run.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is something then that these drivers have got to consider as they go through the next few laps here. They are still figuring out these conditions, and then of course with the slippery conditions, you want to make sure you don't rack up too many of those time penalties. To give you a quick rundown of those, nobody apart from Rookie has exceeded 3 seconds worth of penalties. Rookie has 6 seconds, but everybody else you see there on the timing tower with a penalty flag next to them, they have got just 3 seconds worth of time penalties. Now, I say just 3 seconds, but if you look at the gaps in the majority of the field here, everybody within about a half a second or so of one another. So having a 3-second time penalty is going to potentially drop you massively down the order. DRS has just been disabled, so up to this point they have been able to use DRS, so now it's going to be all the more difficult for these guys to be able to get themselves alongside and then past a driver in front. Certainly is, yeah, and it's interesting at this point. Obviously, everybody now on the intermediate tyres, so their performance is somewhat equalised. There's no difference in tyre strategy anymore. As we saw at the start of this race, the majority of the field on hards, some on the mediums, and then one driver on the softs. Of course, then in the case of the soft tyre driver, they ended up then having to pit before the rain came along. So as Joris gets themselves a 3-second time penalty there, so that will not help the driver down in 13th position at the moment. But throughout the field then we've got close battles, and amongst the closest is up at the front of the field. Fionn has been able to get themselves back into contention here with Jerry Van Bussel. And Jerry is in a bit of a pickle here because they have less than 10% ERS available. And given that there's now no DRS, ERS becomes the main overtaking aid, if you will. And if my screen is correct, Fionn McKee has 45% of their battery full, whereas Jerry Van Bussel has just that 10%. So this is going to potentially give a huge advantage now in terms of the overall battle that we're seeing here between first and second to the McLaren drive behind. And then, of course, Vincent Nyquist is waiting in the wings just in case these two collect one another and end up having an almighty crash. But we will wait to see how this develops. Over the top of Radion they go then, and it's full attack mode from Fionn. It's full defense mode from Jerry as well, but Jerry is now at 0% ERS. They have none remaining, and that means then that Fionn goes to the outside in Les Combes, and they're squeezed off of the circuit there. They were alongside, and they were forced off of the track. That's not going to put, well, Jerry's going to very much remove themselves from Fionn's Christmas card list there, and then into Bruxelles they go, up the inside, and that is then a move done for the lead of this Grand Prix, but it's not over. Look at this, then the Williams tries to hang it all the way around the outside, get up the inside into No Name Corner, but it doesn't quite work for them. Downhill now towards Braun. Will there be a counter-attack? It certainly looked as though it might be that way, but again, just no purchase off the corner, no extra acceleration there, and Jerry Van Bussel gets a 3-second time penalty. Absolutely, yes indeed. Fionn there, very good bit of move that they had going. A good bit of move. Crikey, good England there, Daniel. Yes, a good move that they made there to get, through alongside them through multiple corners and being able to pull it off finally. Jerry now trying to get back onto terms here, but they don't have the ERS to really be using it quite as liberally as they are at the moment. They're now going over the top of Radion with only 6% of their ERS remaining. That then gives Fionn the opportunity to then just press their button, get down to a roughly similar figure, and then they've been able to pull a gap on them as a result. It's now just over a second between the two drivers, and through all of their battling, it has allowed then a certain Vincent Nyquist to go from 3.3 seconds back to now 1.3 seconds back from Jerry Van Bussel. So all of a sudden, fourth place in the championship is now eyeing up the two joint leaders and thinking, do you know what, I might be able to have these guys, because he's got a good 10 or 15% more ERS available than the two cars in front. So definitely an opportunity for Vincent Nyquist here, and plenty of time in which to do it. Just under 10 laps to go in this race then, and we have had a great little battle so far for the lead of this race, but further down the order we've got some great battles going on as well. We're just on board with Kozzy at the moment then in the Red Bull, and they are chasing after Franek, of course, who had the big slide earlier on, was turned all the way around in the first corner, and that meant they fell all the way from being a podium or potentially even race-winning contender now to being stuck in the midfield in the lower points-paying positions. Now, Franek is stuck behind Roman, who's in turn stuck behind Mattia De Campo, who in turn is stuck behind Elliott, who's stuck behind Norby. Norby then has a great big bit of free air between them and then the next car up the road, that being Dimitri Milic, about 6.5 seconds or so. And this is all going to mean then that we're likely to see a rather scrappy fight here. Now, in terms of the scrappy fights we saw last time out in similar wet conditions, well, one driver who impressed greatly in their defence was Elliott, who's currently up in P6. We're looking at Roman at the moment down in P8, but you can see just two cars in front is Elliott, and Elliott seems to have set their car up once again for good straight line speed because they have 73% of their ERS available. Yet behind them, just to be able to keep up, Mattia De Campo has used so much so as to now be down at about 30% ERS as they break and turn in for La Source. So, as they head down the hill now towards Eau Rouge and Radion, I would expect to see Roman maybe having an opportunity here with Mattia De Campo, and Mattia is going to be struggling to keep on terms with Elliott, I think, here. So now, on to the Camel Straight we go then. Will we see any use of that overtake button for either of these drivers? It doesn't seem to be happening here, actually, in fact. So Roman and Mattia deciding, no, we're going to keep on cracking on and we're just going to use the normal power available to us and not use that overtake button. I think this is one of those instances, really, where an engineer for the driver could then go on the radio and say, hey, I've been looking at the data, if they've got either any of their telemetry apps open that they can then have a look at these things, or they can, have a look instead at perhaps something along the lines of their even this stream, for instance, us talking about the differing ERS levels. They can say, okay, driver in front has much less ERS than you, use yours to pressure and overtake them, maybe pressure them into a mistake, and that would be something very handy for Roman right now. But as it is, I don't know if they're flying solo, but it certainly looks like it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they are flying solo. I'll tell you who is feeling a bit solo is Jerry right now. We've been focusing on the mid-pack battle, but guess who's caught up with the front? It's Vincent. He was 1.5 seconds back, but some reason, Jerry and Fionn not finding necessarily the pace that you expected. It has allowed the second McLaren to make a lovely little McLaren-Williams sandwich. I think we need to come up with a good name for that type of meal. It sounds pretty juicy, because I don't think it's going to be too long until Vincent finds a way past Jerry, as his pace has been absolutely sterling. He's been really pumping in the laps. to get this close. Now, he's not close enough necessarily to do anything this lap, but maybe next lap. That's a forecast to what could happen the next lap or the lap after.
There we are then. Now, because of course of the flashing lights that we have, of course, which start to come on because the drivers have put their intermediate tyres on, as Elliott gets a time penalty and then immediately retires from the race. There's a massive incident there for Elliott. I think it's at the top of Eau Rouge and Radion. I think it is. I've moved over to Days Rhombus here to be able to have a look as they come over the top of the hill. And, yeah, it's like Kevin Magnussen all those years ago in the Renault. They have put it into the wall on the right-hand side, and that is their race run. So the great defender of last time out, the Miami Minister of Defense, if you will, has been able to end up putting it in the wall. So they will not be the Belgian Minister of Defense this particular race. But as things stand then, that has then allowed the cars who were following them previously, the likes of Mattia Di Campo, Roman, and so on, to suddenly have the bottle uncorked. And they can now power on after the likes of Norby up in front. Now, in terms of that battle up towards the top end of the field, the sharp end, we see Vincent Nyquist now just 3/10 back, 2.5 tenths now back from Jerry Van Bussel. And not only that, but he's got a good 15-20% ERS benefit in his favour. So Jerry now into just 5% ERS remaining, whereas Vincent, who now goes to the outside, down on the run towards the bus stop chicane. Jerry brakes later, is able to get the car and pinch ahead, really squeezes the McLaren, perhaps even squeezes the McLaren too much, and then desperate to go on the power. They seem to get a good enough exit there out of the last corner, but then headed into La Source, it looks like that second phase of acceleration has benefited Vincent Nyquist. Instead, they go round the outside of La Source, and they're pushed all the way off of the circuit. The driving standards here, they are like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. They're smacking each other off of the circuit, no quarter given, and now as they head through Eau Rouge over the top of Radion, it's going to be curtains, I think, for Jerry Van Bussel's defense, unless something akin to Michael Schumacher versus Mika Hakkinen happens. But no, instead, it's like watching Perez and Albon a few years ago. Onto the grass practically goes Vincent Nyquist up the inside, and they get P2.
Oh, that defending from the Williams of Jerry. He was not given an inch of room. He did not want that place to be lost, even though they technically are fighting for whatever position they come out as, which will be P3 technically. This is a fight for P3 according to penalties as well. So yes, they are putting their elbows out. They are going to get aggressive, and they're definitely trying to show who is alpha. And clearly, Vincent is the alpha, and unfortunately, Jerry, you are the beta in this situation. But wow, that was aggressive, and a little bit of the rain has definitely made people a bit angry, and it usually does. Still, further back, the battle still is going on with this mid-pack. Nothing's changed with this mid-pack, but they're still fighting amongst each other and still trying to close the gap. The person who's had the most runs and most attempts to overtake is Roman on Mattia, and then second to get the most runs is Cozzy onto Frankie. But yet, no matter what they do, they are unable to get the straight line speed because the car ahead is just that little bit faster. The setup just designed for it. So watching Cozzy right now, he was 3/10 around the corner. He's now nearly 5/10 coming into the bus stop chicane. There's just no straight line speed for Cozzy. And then Roman can't do it either. Again, through the corners. He's going down to about 3/2 and sometimes 1/10 behind the car. And then down the straights, because Mattia has that better straight line speed, he's able to keep ahead. And here's the demonstration. We're down to 3/10, so look at that. Back up to 5/10, drops down to 4, but we're going through a corner, so this is going to favour Roman. Got a bit of a straight, he's now got the RS, he's got the straight line speed, and it's...
But look at this. Sorry to interrupt you, but there's 0 ERS remaining in Mattia's battery. So if Roman knew that and they were deploying themselves, which they didn't do, all the way down the Camel Straight, they would have had a very easy overtake there.
Absolutely. This is where team engineers, you were saying earlier, it can be critical to a race. And we see that in the higher tiers. A lot of the drivers will actually have a personal race engineer calling out. Now, if he knew that, that's fair game. That's good days for him, but... unfortunately, no, you didn't get that information, and that was a wasted opportunity.
It certainly was, but there's still plenty of opportunities to come in this race. We've got, of course, lap 18 of 22 here, and now it's almost like a reverse role situation of Austria. We have two McLarens getting very close to one another in the final stages here, and the one behind is in desperate desire to overtake the other. And we may not see much of a fight here. It might be that Fionn just allows their teammate through to try and maximize that team result, because of course, as you can see, Vincent Nyquist is carrying a time penalty, whereas Fionn is not, and so therefore Fionn able to allow their teammate through, and as long as they don't get 3 seconds ahead of them, they will then retain the position and get P1 in this race. But as it is, as we head on to the start of lap 19, it doesn't look like there's going to be much threat from behind just yet. And certainly, in terms of those two McLarens, they are on very similar ERS deployment strategies at the moment. Both of them, in fact, on 5% ERS at this very moment. And so things are very equal between the pair of them. Same then for Jerry Van Bussel behind. But the real danger to these guys in front is actually down in P4, Dimitri Minic, as, now we have... someone has stopped on circuit, I think. I think that's Maceo. Yeah, Maceo's had an incident somewhere down at Stavolo, actually, and then they have ended up coming to a complete and total halt, and then they head off once more. So that's them and the update on the yellow flags, and Roman has now finally, at the end of the Kemmel Straight this time, been able to get past the Alfa Romeo of Mattia De Campo. So there we go then. Used an awful lot of ERS to do it. They went from 30 to about 15%, but of course with Mattia with so little remaining in their battery, they were just not able to defend that one whatsoever. Now they have Norby in their sights just in front. Absolutely. One driver who might well be getting penalties from the stewards afterwards, if there's such a rule, would be the driver in last place at the moment, that being Attila. They and Joris, for some reason, have decided to go onto the soft tyre when the track is very much not dry. And as a result, we're now seeing Attila going off the circuit everywhere like Bambi. And Vincent, yeah, there we go. Vincent has gotten the move done somewhere. Whilst I was looking at the two back markers who've decided to go onto soft tyres, Vincent Nyquist is able to get themselves up into P1 in this race. So as a result then, they're up there in the lead. But of course, remember, that is not actually P1 for where it stands at the moment. If he gets 3 seconds ahead, then he will be. Certainly could. And again, different ERS strategies being employed here by the two drivers. Fionn not making much use of their ERS, whereas Vincent is using it at every opportunity. And that has meant that over just one lap, they've now been able to pull a 1.5 second gap, which is hard. Race. Now, I don't know why Fionn would decide not to use their ERS. I don't know if there's maybe a big problem on their car. Maybe their tyres are completely dead. Who knows? But certainly if they're completely dead on their car, they're not dead on the car behind of Jerry Van Bussel. Jerry now having a sniff up the inside. They're not going to be able to get the move done on this occasion, but they are getting very close indeed. I think there must be some sort of problem with Fionn. In fact, Fionn gets a rear ending there from Jerry Van Bussel, who continues to rear end the McLaren there. And I think that, I mean, consent is everything, Jerry. I think you need to be a bit kinder there to Fionn in front. But there we are. So they have a bit of argy-bargy then. And through the corners, I don't think Fionn will be appreciating that too much. But as Vincent Nyquist now heads into Pouon, they are 2.4 seconds ahead and still have another lap to be able to pull another 0.6 of a second away from their teammate. I think that this may well end up being Vincent Nyquist taking the win in this race here, unless Fionn is able to just get their act together here and really start to arrest the advantage that their teammate seems to have drawn out of them at this point. But it's interesting because on board with the McLaren of Fionn, they're not making much use of their overtake button, yet their ERS value is staying pretty much as it is. That being said, though, I think so. I think they may have been playing the team game. They allowed Vincent to get away to then have sufficient gap then to the cars behind Fionn currently. And DRS has now been re-enabled, so the track seemingly is drying out. So for those drivers who decide to go on the soft time, maybe it makes a bit more sense now. But as it is then, Fionn has a lot more ERS available than Vincent does. As they head up towards the line then, it's all going to be about who gets the final bus stop chicane right here. And then, of course, their exit of that corner as well. Vincent Nyquist goes through the bus stop chicane. They are 2.8 seconds ahead of their teammate. They come up towards the line, 2.9 seconds now. The gap is incredibly close between them. Vincent Nyquist comes across the line, and Fionn McKee wins for the first time in PSGL PEC F5 Season 31. And that means our third new winner in as many races. Vincent Nyquist manages to keep P2 due to the incredible teamwork between the two drivers, and Dimitri Minic rounds out the podium.
Yeah, brilliant drive by Fionn, qualified him first. He definitely didn't have it easy throughout the race. He had to not only maintain the position, he had to fight with a couple of other drivers to hold where he is. And Vincent not making it easy either. Vincent been up there, definitely trying to put pressure on. And both McLarens again. Austria 1-2, Belgium 1-2. I think this is going to be a very interesting championship because Dimitri also starting down in P12, getting himself up to P3. Jerry in P4. We're seeing him in the top 5 quite consistently. And Norbid into P5 with Mattia holding out in front of the entire train in front of him. He had a massive train, but he still held behind Ramina, Kozzy, Kitty, Frankie, Alex, and Rookie in that train.
Certainly did, yeah. That was some great driving up and down the field, especially with the great entertainment we've had there at the end of the race. And well, that was a great bit of racing there between everybody that we saw. And well, as we say then, Fionn McKee keeping that championship lead then, headed into the next round, which will be at Mexico. And Jerry Van Bussel, Dimitri Minic and Vincent Nyquist all there as well. But now Vincent Nyquist will retake second position in this championship. When, of course, they were leading after round 1, dropped down to P4 at the end of the last race in Miami, and now they have themselves up into a convincing P2.
Definitely spicing up this championship. I don't think this championship is going to be over until the very, very last race. It's going to go down to the wire when we head to the last race. I can't remember which track it is we're heading to finish it all off, but it's going to be a battle indeed, and there he is. The man who got the win, and it's just amazing what the drivers are capable of and how well they can work through the field. And there you go. Just to remind you, look at P3, grid 12, and he's up to P3. Same with Jerry. Jerry started P10 and he put himself to P4. So a lot of surprise positions right there.
Certainly were, yeah, and I think also worth mentioning that, of course, taking fastest lap and fastest lap point was Fionn. So managed to get that sorted in the early stage of this race before the rain came down. And then, of course, when it did start to come down, of course, we then had no opportunities for any other fastest laps after that point. To give you some idea of the difference in terms of those lap times, well, lap 2, Fionn set the fastest lap of this race, and that was 1:46.7, and then it was 1:54s, 55s and 53s for the rest of the race for them. So that's your lot then. You have Fionn McKee, Vincent Nyquist and Dimitri Minic as your top 3, and then Jerry Van Bussel, Norby, Mattia, Roman, Kozi, Kinti, Franek, Alex, Rookie, Dazed Rhombus, Jeremy, Joris, Attila, Maceo, Elliott and Sally rounds out the order with that early race DNF.
Yeah, absolutely indeed. Wrong camera. My camera seems to have died once again, no surprise. Wow, that definitely was probably one of the best racing we've seen. Now, I said that about Miami, but it's just stepped up once again from these guys. These guys keep surprising us every race. In answer to my own question, we're going to be last race will be Great Britain, where we'll be having the finale, and that track is full of overtaking, and with the way these guys act, honestly, it's going to be quite entertaining to see that form of action on a track like that.
Certainly will be, yes. I think that, seeing action in races like Silverstone, and then of course we've also got, as I say, next time out we've got Mexico, then we'll have Japan, we'll have Italy, we'll have Abu Dhabi on its new layout, we'll have Brazil, we'll have Italy again. Whether that's Imola first or Monza first, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but Monza, and there we go. And then of course we've got the US Grand Prix as well at COTA. So plenty left to see. Lots to be said and done in terms of the fighting that we could potentially see at those circuits. I think the likes of Japan with the new cars, Italy, both of the Italys, and Brazil, of course, going to be great opportunities for some overtaking and some various bits and pieces going on, I think.
A massive amount of overtaking opportunities. They've definitely designed this league has definitely chosen tracks that are very eye-catching. We know there's going to be some great action. We know there's going to be some moves that we aren't expecting. Of course, talking about the move round the outside of 10 and 11. I said that's a sneaky point. You use that into turn 12, but to use it as an overtaking point, 10 and 11, that is just mind-boggling. And I will be honest, I will be posting that. I will be clipping it. Daniel, you are so welcome. You're going on my TikTok. Feel honoured. Because that was honestly the most amazing move I've ever seen. And yeah, that just shows what type of racing we have here. Now, that being said, if you enjoyed the action, of course, subscribe to the channel. There are many more action coming around. It's not just us. We're tier 5 out of, well, we're only streaming 6 of the PC tiers and 6 of the PS tiers. So if you're a PlayStation fan, there are 6 of those. But if you want the ultimate, of course, stay tuned to F1, where the professionals of the likes of Joel Opmer will be racing amongst the greats while the professionals battle it out and have a stonker of a time. But if you do not wish to watch that and you only want to see the lovely commentary of myself and Daniel, then stay tuned next week. We're heading to Mexico with the Mais Speedy and the Fus Delicioso.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega and Grid Rival, proudly supporting PSGL.